Let's break down this super sick social graphic I made for App State football. There's a lot of lighting and 3D elements involved, so let's get into it. So we have our text in the background. You don't always need 3D text or crazy looking text. This time it's just plain white. Longest active streaks among FPS programs. I like a lot of the time to use big text for the main words, and then have smaller text that's spread out from letter to letter underneath or over top of that. That just gives you a really clean look. So then I have these rectangles, and they have a bevel on them, which makes them look like a little 3D slot, and then an inner shadow and a gradient overlay to give them even more of that 3D look. So it really looks like it's on a different plane. And then I added in our black and white logo to that, put App State underneath and their stats, then added another rectangle and put Buffalo's logo in there because they're the other team incorporated in this stat. But I was not trying to emphasize them as much as us, so that's the only piece that is in there of theirs. So, and again, all you have to do is take the logo and then Alt click between layers, and it will go just onto the rectangle. So that's what I did there. Then I found a bull outline, and I just cut that out, and I just used layer masks from these different colors to make different size bulls going from back to front. So it's just a bull cutout and the layer mask of yellow, white, yellow. This front one has a gradient overlay on it just to make it pop a little more, and they are all in one group that has a layer mask that's just split right down the center of the graphic. So they only show up on the right side of the graphic. That's what it would look like if they didn't. So I have them cut right there, and then I have them cut on the bottom from another group layer mask. So this is it. That's all you got of them. Then I added in another PNG of outline of a bull face and made that yellow. And so the theme here is we have this graphic is sort of talking about rushing, and our linemen who block for the runner are called the bulls, or that's what App State calls their O-line, is the bulls. So that is why I have these bull pictures on here. And again, I have just a black PNG of a bull, and then I have an inner shadow on that to give it some depth. As you can see, makes it look sort of 3D-ish. And then I just have this yellow layer overlaying that, and there's a gradient overlay on that yellow layer to make it pop. So that's how we got there. That's also cut down the middle. All that's put in one group with a layer mask on it. This is how you make the layer mask. And then you just use a square, put it on this right side or on this left side, and then cut it down the middle. And that's how you do that. So then we have running with the bulls text, and that font I believe is called Rhino's Rocks if y'all are interested in finding that. And then this is a shadow layer of his hair over top and his face over top of this text. So I just cut his head out basically, and then like where it was starting to meet his neck is where I sort of like blended it into the background. I got a desaturated super high detailed shot of him yelling, and because I turned up the texture and clarity, I had to desaturate it to make it look right, I feel like. But then I added back in a colored version over top of that and just set it to a certain blending mode, and it gave it just like a high detail look and kept the color. So then I felt like his mouth and his nose needed depth because you can kind of see in his mouth and his nose. So I just used a black brush, simple technique, and just brushed it in right there at 70% opacity, and then did the same thing with his mouth. And I cut a hard edge where his tongue is, and then just kind of faded it back through here. So that's what that looks like. So I think all that just kind of gives it more depth. And then I just put a curves layer over top of that whole group. So that's what the group is. And then I just put a curves layer over top. And as you can see, it takes the darkest areas and blends them into the background. So this background is completely black. So what we're gonna do is blend it in. Right now, all of it is just too light. So when we pull the darkest areas down, you can just see how it blends into the background so much better. So you have like the lighter areas still popping out, but it just looks like it's blended into the background of the graphic. Then we have a lens flare. You can find a bunch of lens flares online and different brushes and stuff online. So I put that there. That's for something later. And then I have this drop shadow for this text that I added in. So this text is kind of close to the background here. That's why the drop shadow is such a harsh line and so dark. And then as it fades away, so as this 1000 gets closer to us as the viewer, it's getting farther away from the background. So that drop shadow kind of fades out and blurs out as it goes. And then that had an inner shadow on it which is just a yellow sort of glowy look, which is coming from the lightning bolt that will be put on there in a minute. And then just like another drop shadow, just kind of making it look a little more like faded and realistic looking. And that is that. And so we have another 3D text layer that's gold, 1,000-yard rusher all together, and on there we have that same inner shadow. Just gives it that glow from the side because there will be a light source right here, so that's why we need to light up this bottom left area in both of the text layers. And we gave that a drop shadow too. That one's even softer because we don't want it to seem like it's too far away from the 1,000 text, because it's not. It's like right over top of it. So we have that there, and then I just added in some white glow down here towards the middle because that's where it's going to be really bright. And then we have our electric arrow bolt thingy. So that just has an inner shadow, and that's set to color dodge. So you can see, like, look how bad that looks by itself. And you add that inner shadow set to color dodge, and it just gives it that orangey, like hot yellow glow, which is great. And then you have a drop shadow, and the drop shadow is another color dodge yellow layer, and that just makes the background pop. So you just have like a light source right here. That looks really cool when you do that. So then I added in some more glow. That's just a yellow brush kind of over top of all that. And then I'm adding in some shading right here, kind of minor down here for where our next cutout's going to be. So there's our cutout, and on top of him we have an inner shadow, which is just a yellow glow because the light source is coming from behind him. So look how good that looks. It looks super realistic to me, I feel like. So you have that glow surrounding him from the light source behind. And then I gave him a little bit of a drop shadow just to kind of separate him from the background a bit, and I think that looks good. You don't want too much because it is a light source, so there would be like light behind here, but it just kind of separates him from the background. So then we have just a black brush over the bottom foot of his to kind of blend it in with the ground, and just a little more yellow glow over top of him to blend him in with that light source a bit. And then we have some lens flare layers just kind of placed strategically throughout the light source. I like this one right here the best because it's like right where it meets the gold text and kind of pops off. And then we have our overlay. It's just a white gradient kind of shining down this way, and then I think a little bit of a dark overlay shining up this way, or shading up this way. I don't know how you want to put it. And then we have our final color lookup, and it just really lifts up the blacks and then really makes the yellows pop super well. Love that. And we just have our logos and a little bit of a color tweak on the yellows to make sure they're not too red. Check out this next video if you want to learn more about sports design. Comment down below and let me know if you want me to put this on the Patreon. There's a lot of cool assets in here, and I think some stuff that you could learn from. So go check that out and comment below if you want to see this on there. And I'll see you in the next one.